Thank you to our sponsors for supporting this episode of Troxel, Arc IT, NCARB, and Avail. We'll share more about them later on in the episode. Welcome to the Troxel Podcast. I'm Evan Troxel. This is the podcast where I have a conversation with guests from the architectural community and beyond to talk about the co-evolution of architecture and technology. In this episode, I welcome Thom Chuparkoff. Thom is the director of the OSPORTS practice, and throughout the last decade, his main focus has been on public assembly, sport, and entertainment venues. Thom has extensive experience designing arenas, stadiums, and entertainment venues across the United States. He's filled many different roles throughout his career as an architect at firms including HKS, Disney, Populous, and as I mentioned earlier, he's currently with OSPORTS, which is a division of Osborne Engineering. We originally met in New York City at the Accelerate AEC conference, where we gave talks about technology and architecture. His was all about creating complex building structures using prefab strategies. And I've put a link to that talk that he gave in the show notes. Thom is really fun to talk to, and he oozes passion for what he does, which I have to say is contagious. He is a positive force in the profession. In this episode, we talk about prefab as an architectural strategy, architectural structures that can be erected and later taken apart, the notion of thriving on problem solving, thinking about architectural projects at a deeper level when it comes to delivering them via prefab, the point at which he began thinking about using prefab as a strategy, why he pursued it and continues to pursue it. We also talk about technology as an enabler to the adaptability of his firm, and more. So without further ado, I bring you my conversation with Thom Chuparkoff. Well, Thom, welcome to the podcast. It's so great to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
It's been a couple of years. I think you said Seattle was the last time we saw each other.
Yeah, it was a year before COVID.
That's right. A year before the Blur's Day.
Blur's Day.
Yeah.
March 13th.
Man, so you're a practicing architect in Florida, and I thought it would be great to have you on the show because you have this, you told me this before, and now I think it's on even your LinkedIn profile, but you say architecture is your hobby. And I think that's ironic for a lot of people who work in the field of architecture. But it's a great attitude. And you definitely have like this contagious attitude. So just where's that come from?
Well, I've had a lot of different opportunities to do different things. And I didn't necessarily grow up in the best environments and, I wasn't exposed to a lot of stuff. And, I always joke on myself because it really starts like when I was a kid, I always just get picked on. You know what I mean? Because I was always little and, I'm a shorter guy. And I learned very quickly that if I make a joke about me first, if you make the joke, you're just late to the party. And then I realized that, and I was in the Air Force and I really found this was like late 90s. And I really kind of found that I really thrived and was more successful as a human being when I was just always having fun. Right. And even in emotional, immense situations of, being an 18-year-old kid in Hungary, right, as an example, you could still have fun. Right. And when you have fun, other people have fun. And then it builds better camaraderie and better trust. Right. So, fast forward. And then I really just fell in love with buildings. And I always just tried to find something as a career that I could have fun in. And I didn't treat it as a job. And for 24 years, I don't feel like I have a job. I feel like I get paid to, do my hobby. And I try to act and perform that way every day.
Yeah. And so do you, I'm just interested in your self-talk when it comes to that. Is it now to the point where you said you kind of developed this as a skill earlier? Now, is it just normal for you, or do you still have to put intention to it?
No. I'm somebody called me blue cheese the other day. They said, you either love you or you hate you, right? Because because I'm like always high energy, and I know it's not intentional. Like sometimes I have to intentionally like just put the brakes on, right? Because I'm just no, it's just my personality.
So you are extroverted by nature.
Extremely.
Yeah, it's interesting because the firm that I was at, most of the people in the firm were introverts. We kind of just did this, just took stock of what was going on. And then there's people like me that ambivert. I'm like right on the line. And so, like I do podcasts, I can be on video, I can present. I was a designer. I presented and walked people through to build consensus. And it wasn't scary to me like it is, a lot of people have that stage fright kind of thing, and they don't want to be up in front of anybody ever. Right. And so on one level, like I can see people who have to turn it on, right, to go into those situations. And then when it's over, they're like, oh my God, thank God it's over. Right. And then there's other people who are just like you said, you're just always on.
Yeah, no, I thrive in that environment. Evan, one time I was blessed for 3 years of my life to work for Disney. I worked on Fantasyland, and we were interviewing for that project a gentleman that is still a very good acquaintance of mine. Here we are 12 years later after Fantasyland, and after the interview, he sat back. And this was in 2008, right? So we're talking a solid, 13 years later. And even 13 years ago, he sat back at the end of the interview, and he's like, whoa, you're like the Billy Mays of architecture. And I thought that was classic.
What are you selling, man? I'm selling
architecture.
architecture.
It's just high octane, I've always been high octane. But again, I mean, it goes back to like, in our business, and this, it's like people should hire people they want to work with, not who they have to work with.
Makes a huge difference over the life of a project. These projects take so long.
Right. I was just with a client yesterday, and she says to me that, she was talking about the project and how she described her design professional partner as family. And she says that, it's been 15 years since we've been talking about this. And you've had that in your career, I'm sure, where it's 5, 6, 7 years is the project is in ideation. And that's when my thing that we met in May was this particular client in California was like, why do I have to spend 40? Like, can we spend 20? Like, is that an option? And I said, you know what? Let's talk to people.
Set the context for that story. So because I know what you're talking about, but the audience isn't going to know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I love baseball and soccer. Those are the two types of sports that I like to.
And golf. Don't forget golf.
And golf. But I haven't done any golf courses because that's a whole different animal. But lots of golf. I golf more than anything. So we were working in San Diego, and there was a client. The team actually still exists. They're getting off the ground, doing well. It's the San Diego 1904. So they this was 2017, 18, and they were coming into the league as an expansion team, as many others. Soccer is obviously growing in this country at a radical pace, and so they were talking to us about what other clubs are doing in other stadiums, and I shared with them my experiences at ML Major League Soccer clubs and other types of facilities, spring training, baseball, and all that stuff, and they're like, look, like we are growing, we're growing a brand, we're launching a team, and we need a place to play. So they're very cognizant, financially speaking, that like it would be silly to do all of that and put a lot more attention to one over the other, because they're all equally as important. The way that the consumer absorbs the product is just as important as consuming the players to be a part of the team, right? Like, and then how the brand gets rolled out, and what's the kit look like, and all of these other nuances. And I said, yeah, I mean, like Disney built cruise ships using prefabrication in the 70s. The Contemporary Hotel, which still is alive today, was built using prefabrication techniques. And it's like, when I'm always pretty candid about the fact that I draw something, give it to a contractor, the contractor gives it to a sub, trade, that trade draws it again, gives it back to the contractor, gives it back to me, is asinine. Like, I can't even believe we still do that. You know what I mean? It's such a waste of resources for the client. I know why we do it. Right? Because it's risk. It's like, who owns the risk, and how the licensing works, and who holds that ownership. I get it. And that's all very, very important stuff, but it doesn't have to be that way. So they were a pretty open client, and they were just like, all right, go look. And, so we peeked around the corner and another corner and another corner. And we started talking to people. And that's how I met Ian and the guys from Hypar and what put me at Accelerate, put me up, because I wanted to talk to like-minded people about the process to provide options for people. And, it became very, very interesting to me. And as an architect, I like to learn. So learning's a hobby. So then it's like, now I'm in sport. Now I'm like learning about elevating the environment we live in by using sustainable tactics. And a lot of those things are the ability for a building to go up and a building to come down, right? And in a responsible way. So that was the context of, and that was in 2017 when I started really exploring the idea.
So they came to you and they thought what they wanted was about $40 million. And somehow through the conversation, they said, hey, is there a way to do it for less so that we can use our money wisely in all of these other areas that we need to spend it on to build the team for the future?
Yeah. You look at the PGA and you look at golf tournaments and outings, domestically and internationally. There's a plethora of good examples of, temporary environments, right? The Waste Management Classic and like that part 3 is the most, celebrated hole in golf, essentially, in tournament play. And, it's all temporary, right? So it's like, there's different levels of temporary and there's different levels of prefabrication. I remind people and everyone always says the same thing. And, some of the people that I've been colleagues with have had the same opinion about like, well, we're not doing Marriott hotels. And I'm like, well, that's fine. We're not doing Marriott hotels, but Marriott's doing Marriott hotels, and Marriott figured to do what they needed to do using prefabrication, right? Like you just have to adapt it and modify it intelligently to solve your problem, right? And then I like to remind people, when builders build hospitals, all the head walls are traditionally pre-manufactured. They're pre-assembled. Why? Because they're super complicated. Because every head wall has to be the same for obvious reasons, right? And, companies like, I'll give them credit, like PCL created that plant up in Toronto called Agile. Like they created a whole fabrication plant, not because they wanted to get into modular construction per se, but they know that it's easier and better for them to take a drawing that you and I put together, figure out how to redraw it, rebuild it so they can fabricate it easier. And I think that's genius. And I think that with technology, automation's easier, control's easier, right? Like the way that we draw. Obviously you've seen, the industry's seen, how now like CAD's like a bad word, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like everything's 3-dimensional, at least.
Especially for this audience. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like it's only going to, expedite the what we do and how we do it. And, I've just always sourced out to, try to be at least on the front end of it, or at least inspire people or try to people to look at it differently.
So take us down this road into prefab and where you guys are and how you got there, because it sounds to me like that was the way that you met the budget intent of the owner in the sports facility in the soccer stadium that you're talking about. But it also, something you mentioned earlier before we started recording, was that technology and architecture are kind of intrinsically linked together. I know there's a lot of people in our profession who do not see it that way, right? But you're saying that that's your point of view, which is, and I think it's mine too. It's that these things are linked together, and they are what give you the flexibility to do what you did, which was not walk away from a project and say, no, man, like you can only do it for $40 million. You said, we're going to find a way to do it for $20 million. And in that way, you were very adaptive to the problem at hand. And then I'm sure that technology played a big part into that. And that kind of feeds us into this idea of exploring prefab. And before that, had you done any prefab stuff, or was it just permanent at that point?
Yeah, it was
stick built, I should say, not permanent.
Yeah, it was all stick built. Yeah. There's been, at my previous place, there was ideas about, pop-up things, or how you can expand a stadium to 25,000 when it's only 18. Like these are all great things and necessary, things like for a football stadium to be able to host a World Cup match and they don't have the capacity or whatever. It's always been just about the bleachers or the grandstands or the seating, right? But I started thinking about like, now I don't have a suite at a place, right? Like I know they're expensive, but like I also know that there's a lot of attrition associated to that, right? Because I have a lot of friends in the premium business, right? Meaning people who work for clubs that sell premium inventory, and because they're pretty expensive, maybe there's a lot of turnover, right? So I thought about like, as we start watching robotics, and I'm like, robotics is amazing, and it's elevating so fast. It's like, there's examples of 3D printed homes, and there's examples of a lot of things in the way that 3D printing is really becoming, quickly obvious to people. I'm not saying that people are ready to accept it. And of course the authorities having jurisdictions, that's a whole different situation. But I thought about like, what if we could just 3D print suites, right? What if one year Evan and Tom want their suite to look like this? We could just print it, right? And then next year they don't renew their contract. Like, shouldn't the club or the entity have the ability? Is it possible to have this like machine that's floating in the rafters, going back and forth like a printer, and just making, because they're all 12 by 12, 12 by 24 boxes. Like, there's no real magic to them, right? The magic is just where they're at, Yeah. So I just, just started trying to think about it and look for an opportunity to have a conversation with a client that was open-minded about it. And I think that is much, it's true that in this case, one of the owners was an international individual who, in Europe, it's not uncommon to be more progressive, right? Like their buildings aren't, although SoFi is an amazing building, right? Like exceptional, but Europe's not they don't need that. You know what I mean? Like, most of the tier 2 clubs in soccer have little boutique stadiums because it's about their culture. It's about their thing, right? Like, it's the NFL that needs the thing, which I get it, because it's an amazing business and it's what it is, but it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. And it's only for 32 people, to be frank, right? It's only for the 32 that are out there. So this particular client was willing to listen to it and let me kind of do some road mapping and exploration, and he supported it. And it became a pretty cool concept. So now I would say that there's a couple examples domestically. You have the Phoenix Stadium would be 1.0. That's how I classify it, 1.0. And then 2.0 is what Inter Miami CF just did down in Fort Lauderdale. They just built a semi-permanent / permanent facility, and they use some prefabrication module aspects, but so it's getting closer. And I have 2 clients. I can't say it online, but one's very close, and we're really going to push the envelope, and it's going to be spectacular. And I will say right now that you're only going to know it's using module and prefabrication because I'm going to be affiliated with it, and people are going to be like, oh, well, whatever. But you won't be able to tell.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, it seems to me like you're using, I guess I already said it, but you're using technology to keep your ability to be adaptive to whatever opportunity shows up, and not just saying, I'm going to do it like I've always done it. Every time you're looking at this is kind of a fresh opportunity. And I think a lot of firms have a hard time being that adaptable, because being able to repeat the process is where a lot of firms make their money, right? So being that adaptable, how have you as a firm, and you're producing the drawings and you're coming up with these ways to assemble parts, whether those are already assemblies of parts, instead of just intent of like, here's a wall, what's that? You figure out what that's made out of. But like, how are you guys adapting to that as a firm?
So it's a great question, and you made a lot of good nuggets in there about, you make money when you repeat things, right? When you don't have to spend time, exploring, and you just kind of like, you're on rinse repeat,
figuring it out from scratch.
It's volume
every time, right?
driven, right? Yes, that's how you control your bottom line. That's how you ensure you're putting the same people in the same spot to do the same thing, right? It becomes second nature. I mean, you put a bookshelf together, it takes you 4 hours. You do the second one, it takes you 3 hours. You do the third one, it takes you 20 minutes, right? And that's how the architectural profession in the sports entertainment world operates typically. Now, I would argue that they're doing that because it's volume driven, right? And if you automate and use technology to influence and enhance your process, this seems like so simple to me, and maybe it is, but the time you spend on rinsing and repeating, why don't you just automate it? If it's the same thing every time, why are you even doing it? Right? So then you can offload that time and allocate it to having fun and being an architect and coming up with a cool idea.
But so many firms do not automate that. And they always default back to, no, we're going to draw this parking lot like it's a different parking lot, but it's made up of the same exact components as the last parking lot. It might have a different layout, but they just continue to operate like that. Why? How did you convince OSPORT to not operate like that? Maybe a different way of saying it.
I am in a senior leadership role here, so I have more authority.
What I say goes.
Yeah, I have a lot more authority, but it's a good question. Trust, right? Like, I think it's just like, look, like, here's why and here's how, and you know, if as long as it's planned and it's, you know, you do your homework. I would never, you know, take a new software and deploy it, right, without knowing how to deploy it. But again, we automate as much as we can to allow us to have some free time, if you will.
Spend your time on better stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Like I don't need to do, this one's funny. Like, I love the parking lot example because it's not far removed from the one I use, but drawing indexes, right? On a stadium and arena project or a ballpark project, there's hundreds of sheets. Right. You know, with the architecture and the engineering and the civil and all the stuff. Right. It's like most of the companies are still like kind of doing that, like categorically are just kind of like doing it like a Excel spreadsheet. Right. Without having, you know, linking it in and, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, it's just a labor intensive thing.
And they're probably full of error. Right.
Yeah. Right. You know, I had one boss a long time ago. Said it's, you know, that's your free throw, right? You can't miss that one. If you screw up the title block or the index or something that's super common, like, you know, how do you have trust with the client? So, you know, I think just, you know, having a plan and you know, a smart person is able to ascertain within minutes if somebody's bullshitting them or not, I would argue. You know what I mean? So if you've done your homework, you've talked to the right people, you know how Stack Module works. You know what, you know, Vector Medina is and who created it and why they created it. And, you know, you start to tell those stories and you've had conversations with them. Then somebody telling you about how you would deploy a module or a prefabricated or, you know, an alternative delivery method, it starts to make more sense because there's more facts supporting it. And supporting people, supporting them, giving them questions. We just had a conversation with them the other day. I have a client to ask about, you know, they want 0 wait times, right? It's like, that's a statement. You know what I mean? Like, how do you do that?
You're talking about like lines, queues and stuff.
Yeah. Food, concessions, restrooms, you know, ingress, egress into the building.
User experience in a facility like that. That would be.
Yeah. And then like, but you still got to, you know, run models and you got to evaluate it. And you and me talking about how Evan and Tom is going to leave section 101, seat A, row 5 type of thing to go to that session and back. Like, that's subjective. You know what I mean? So, but if you're modeling these things out and creating models, digital models to simulate that, that's not subjective. Disney's been doing that for years. You know what I mean? To control the circulation of the space, using technology to control where people go, right? Like Disney just released this Genie Plus thing where, you know, you put in all your parameters of what you like to do, and they set up an agenda for you, right? And then if your agenda and my agenda are likes are similar, and we're going at the same time, they just readjust the agenda so that you and I aren't, you know, bumping into each other all day. In theory, right? Like, but it's the same thing, you know. Just trying to peek around the corner and see what's next and how can it help you? Because, you know, it's not. My brother wrote a book one time. It's called "Your Outsourcer's Outsourcer Will Be a Robot," and it's it's pretty fascinating because it's just like, everything we do could be offloaded by technology. The only thing in our industry, and of course, I'm not sure if I'm exactly right on this, is, again, people should work for people or work with people they like. And you know what I mean? Technology can't make that decision. So there's still, that's why I love architecture, because you can still be I love just, being a part of it and having fun doing it. And like, there's nothing more fun and rewarding than seeing an owner see the building built for the first time. Like, that's just, I don't care what kind of building it is. It's like, wow, that's what we did. Yes, that's what we did. We being everybody.
Yep. Right.
Yeah.
The team. Yeah.
Let's take a quick break to share more about our sponsors.
Arc IT. This time we've got another fantastic review of Arc IT from somebody working in our industry. Here's a quote. Our company has worked with Arc IT for many years. They are very skilled, competent, thoughtful, and thoroughly professional network experts. They have helped us resolve mission-critical issues on more than a few occasions. Due to their in-depth IT knowledge and the tech industry in general, we regularly consult with them before embarking on new IT projects. They are highly recommended. And that is a quote by Jackson Ng, who is the Director of Technology at Bar Architects. So, as business owners and architects, how often do we think about our IT provider? Typically, only when things go wrong. And for many of us, unfortunately, this happens too often, especially with the latest emphasis on remote work. I know that I've had to deal with my fair share of IT fire drills. Not pleasant. Arc IT, however, is a very different kind of company. They specialize in serving architecture, design, and engineering firms, and their goal is to help you use technology as a competitive advantage. This means that they understand your technology stack, and they won't waste your time and money learning how your tools work within your process. Combine that with industry-leading response times, proactive remote hardware management, and solid disaster recovery and backup solutions. That's something that everybody should be thinking of, honestly. And enterprise-grade security management. And yet, above all, these are just table stakes for a solid IT company. Arc IT goes a step further. They become your strategic partner when it comes to planning, budgeting, and integrating new technology into your business processes. So all of this sounds expensive, right? Nope. Because Arc IT is highly specialized for our industry, their pricing is on par or in some cases even lower than other IT providers. Arc IT is transparent and even publishes the pricing right on their website. Speaking of their website, there's also something else you should check out when you're there, and that is their Design Under Influence blog and video series. Again, adding value to IT type solutions across industry, all good stuff. So your business deserves a competent, responsive, and proactive IT partner. Reach out to my friends at Arc IT for a free consultation. So go to getarchit, that's getarchit.com, arc like architecture in the middle, and click Work with Us.
Let's talk about content. What is content? You're probably thinking Revit families. Well, yes, of course. But the reality is that you use dozens of applications in your workflows. How many file types and formats are you using and creating every week? Here's some of the usual suspects: CAD and modeling files like AutoCAD, Civil 3D, Rhino and Revit and SketchUp, visualization files like 3D Studio Max scenes and models, materials and assets, photos and imagery, including renderings, site context and snapshots, project information like spreadsheets and product cut sheets, URLs for your intranet and external websites, and even marketing assets like your PowerPoint decks and proposals. I wish it wasn't true, but this list just scratches the surface. You know what I'm talking about. We all deal with a lot of data, and this is the new problem. The good news is, if it's digital, Avail can handle it. Avail has seen more than 1,000 different file types in their platform. They've taken a very holistic approach to content management problems in the AEC market. Most of the time, someone in a firm is looking to solve a specific problem like Revit family storage, but the fact of the matter is that you should be solving for the longer term. Avail future-proofs your technology investment. Go to getavail.com today to learn more. NCARB's analysis of practice study is your opportunity to shape the future of architecture. Participate in this industry-wide survey to share your experiences and insights from working in architecture, engineering, or construction. Your feedback will help guide changes to what being a licensed architect looks like and impact how architects collaborate with other professionals in the future. Whether you're an architect or you work with architects, NCARB wants to hear from you. Make sure your voice is heard. Contribute to the analysis of practice study today. Sign up at ncarb.org/AOP. And now let's get back to our conversation.
So let's get back to the prefab stuff. I would love it if you could take me on a journey of what you've done in prefab from where you started to where you are now. Because I know, like, when we met at the AEC Accelerate AEC conference in New York City, you were talking about a particular project. And I think when people think prefab, they could think a lot of different things, right? You could think parts, panels, actual spaces, structure in your case, so take us down this road of what you guys have experienced in your journey in prefab.
Yeah, I mean, so it's fun. It's been a part and pieces type of journey, meaning, on certain projects, it's deployed a little bit here or there. But, the one that I'm very optimistic and hopeful that it becomes very public in the next quarter or so. We're really trying to figure out, to me, prefabrication is also the way we deliver the project, right? It's not just about me drawing a shipping container and modifying it, or a pod, or creating, let PCL Agile create this hotel room or a suite, which are essentially the same thing. In fact, my 6-year-old son, he won't, every time he asks me, like every time we go to the Rowdies game or the Rays game, he's like, "Are we in the hotel room again?" You know what I mean? It's like, because it's comfortable to him, right? But the point is, it's just the same thing, right? So really deploying how we can look at traditional spaces and try to build them and draw them and ideate them differently. But it's also about how we have conversations with contractors, right? Like, what is the stream between when an owner comes to an architect to come up with an idea or validate the feasibility of a concept in a project? Like, my next call is usually to a trusted advisor in the construction world and say, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking. I want, they have this vision. I could come up with a cool image. I could let you price it." And then they could say, "That's too much money," right? Or why don't we just kind of like come at this from a design, build, design, assist strategy right out of the gate and come up with the technique and the imagery. We'll come up with the concept, and then let's figure out how to put this thing together, reverse engineer it. So I would say the number one thing that we've done, and I've done over the last 3-4 years, is really define what that reverse engineering looks like, and then try to defend it and try to help educate people on why it makes sense for them, why a construction company A should entertain this, and how we communicate that to most importantly, to an authority having jurisdiction about why, it meets the Florida Building Code, or it complies with California code and all that stuff like that. There's been a lot of that in the first 3 to 4 years for me, right?
Okay, I already want to go off on a tangent, so hopefully we'll get back to where you were going with that. But okay, so why prefab? Like, because I know there's a lot of firms out there who think they need to offer prefab as an option for their clients, whether it's based on speed or they think they're going to get more projects because it's going to expand their capabilities. Or what was it for you guys that really unlocked it as something you had to figure out how to do?
Well, I think "had's" a pretty big word. I don't think I would say I had to. I think what I would say is I wanted to. Like, I just wanted to explore if it was feasible. Like, it was. I think that's the fairest way to think about why I went down that road with 1904, because as an architect, I thrive on solving problems. And I feel like I was like, "Oh man, all this stuff around me. I'm seeing all these examples of how companies are doing different things and looking at other sectors. Is there a way? Is there a plausible path down the road where we could do this?" And the more and farther I got down that path, there was just checking one box after the other. And I don't think it's just prefab. I think, it's only been 4 to 5 years So it's still, I would say, still in its infancy for sure. And I'm still learning every day. I mean, I talked to, there's a conference, the World of Modular, which is a pretty interesting conference. And you go to that conference and it's about hotels and, the small boutique things and some multifamily housing in California, that kind of stuff. That's where it's being deployed. But the more I go, it's just like then I learn more about technology, right? Like then I learn more about like how they track it, how you're talking about like parts and pieces. Like to me, do you know how many times I've drawn a curtain wall on a building and it has a different type of metal panel, and I have 285 panel Bs and 3,800 panel Cs, and it's just a spreadsheet, a very linearly thought of type of thing, and it's like it's consuming, and they've already figured that out. They've already figured out how to track different types of units, and which just makes my life easier. So again, I don't think it's I think it was a want, and now it's just kind of interesting to me. But it could be anything. I mean, for me right now, it's just how can I leverage, alternative construction and alternative thinking to traditional bricks and stick type of bricks.
For what purpose?
Why? Well, I think it's more cost effective. I think it's more responsible to deploy money. You can't ignore that, stadiums usually involve a public commitment and a private commitment. And public commitments are either a penny tax or some sort of TIF or some sort of land access. There's always something that Tom and Evan and other experience as a resident, as a community member, that you have to commit to it, right? So again, being socially responsible, like, yeah, is an architect's commission larger on an 80 million versus a 40? Of course, right? Would that be nice? Yes. But like, it's also not right, in my opinion. And maybe that's where I deploy, like, maybe that's where I differ and where I kind of go off my own Thom Chuparkoff tangent. It's like, my job is to solve a problem. And small projects are just as complicated as big projects. And so I think it's just kind of like, for me, I feel like it's my civic duty. And that might be cliche, but it's true.
So are all these projects private, public partnership type projects?
Most of them, yeah. If not, yeah, high majority.
What's it like when you're going through that process of, explaining the project? I mean, obviously we're talking about what I used to call a multi-headed client, right? You're convincing the owners, you're convincing the public, you're convincing the people who are going to use the project, you're trying to convince the people who are never going to use the project, who are still going to, throw in their penny for it, right? So what is that like in the sports world? Yeah,
I mean, it's a lot of front-facing community meetings. A lot of presentation decks gets tailored differently. You get into even things about like sports lighting and how that impacts the neighborhood down the street. About how late am I going to hear the aluminum bats of a baseball being hit on a Wednesday night. Okay, you're bringing 10,000 people into my neighborhood. How what's that going to do for me as a resident? So. I mean, no differently than your experience. It's really just educating people on why we're doing what we're doing, and what are the tactics. And for me, the general public doesn't necessarily care how it gets built. I would say that they have blinders on in that, because it's not within their understanding or interest level, quite frankly. And then so as long as you communicate that we're being effective about it, and it's going to look really nice, it's going to provide value, and this is how you can use it on Sunday when it's not being used on Saturday, and so there's a lot of that. But for the AHJ, the authority having jurisdiction, it's a lot about like explaining how they're going to build it, right? So that because traditionally speaking, there's a rough-in inspection, a plumbing inspection, an electrical inspection, and the inspector goes out there and he or she is monitoring. You're not able to do that in certain scenarios, right? So saying, okay, well, listen, we're going to build, here's the schedule, and these 15 pods or these 200 pods are going to be built this period at this factory. Now, then you bring in a third-party inspector that's approved by the city or the county or the state or the municipality is controlling that. And then you involve them in the process from the start. So it's a lot of communication front-end work. I would say that there's probably if hypothetically say schematic design was 3 months, there's probably 6 months to 9 months on, of front facing pre-work to, kind of enter, educate everybody what we're doing, what we want to do. And those durations are just, for in theory, I mean, it's much longer. Like we talked about casually about some of these projects take 5-10 years.
Yeah. I had flashbacks, bad flashbacks when you were talking about like environmental impact reports about lighting and the sound of bats. And yeah, I've done plenty of sports field type stuff where it's like bring in the Musco lighting and we got to do all the studies and it takes a long time to get all anyway, I don't want to go anywhere with that, but I just want to let you know, you triggered me.
Yeah. Like living in Florida, it's like, oh man, I love sea turtles. Like, and every time we do something near the water, right, that's a real thing. It's like, but yeah, I mean, I think most people are, once you, again, going back to, why, I mean, I think once people know and see examples and know that you're being mindful with the dollars, I think people just appreciate it.
Yeah. That level of transparency. I hope that's the right word for that. But yeah,
no, it is. It's a great word.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you have to do.
So
within reason.
When you guys are using prefab, I think I know the answer to this, but my guess is because you're building a bunch of modules off in the factory, and then this thing just seems to kind of magically get built in a short period of time because people aren't seeing that happen because it's all happening offsite, and then it just shows up and it's like, boom. I bet there's a lot of value in that alone. Just the perception of, the people who are paying for it, number one, because it's like, wow, progress. Like when you see that stuff going up, it's incredible, especially at the speed at which it does. But I would also assume kind of the neighborhood around it sees it like that too. It's like their process of living through construction is way shorter, potentially.
Schedule has always been a big factor. I have to admit 100% that I haven't really even added what you just said as a pro to the list because I literally haven't necessarily qualified that. And that's a fact. Like we talk about the schedule, it takes 20 months to design something and it takes 2 years to build. Okay. Let's just scale. Let's provide some scale. I'm talking about a 25,000 seat collegiate D1 football stadium. Okay. That's not like the big house or the horseshoe or, or the Rose Bowl or something like, that's a 4-year commitment, but for 24 to 30 months of that 4 years, there's site displacement, construction trailers, backhoes, bulldozers, everything you just described, coming and going, through the thing.
So to noise pollution and traffic stoppages and the streets are getting dug up to put in utilities, all that stuff. It's just like the day-to-day nuisance of living near a construction zone.
So when we talk about schedule, we historically talk about it in like the benefit to the client being able to open the doors quicker, right? Because the minute the doors open, then it triggers a lot of financial benefits, right? In winter months in a northern climate, right? You can't, you're not laying turf down in January, February, and March in anywhere in New England or anywhere north of the Mason-Dixon line for that matter, and so we talk about how it speeds up construction because, like you said, in December and January, you can be fabricating all the units that you need, right? And then come March and April, when it's clear, boom, then they go up, right? So it speeds up that piece. But you're 100% right. I mean, like the other, in addition to just speeding up and being able to work through a whole season or 4 seasons in a snowy climate, a winter climate, is the value. And then in addition, the residential impact. And I honestly, I never really spoke about that. Like I never even thought about it per se, Yeah.
It's interesting to think about. I mean, one of the things I visited a prefab modular plant and they said they start with logistics, and architects rarely have to think about logistics, right? Usually that's the contractor's job to figure that out. And they want to do the 4D planning, and they want to, the phasing and where's the laydown area and where's all this stuff. We don't usually have to worry about that as architects, but have you had to think about that more going into prefab or not?
I mean, I think, yes, the answer is yes. And in fact, earlier we were talking, about reverse engineering it, right? Like like that's what you have to do. Like you got to figure out there are something like, again, I owe it to Disney because in 2008, when I worked there on Fantasyland, we had we called it the coaster in a bottle, right? Because we developed all of Fantasyland, and then there was an attraction in the middle of Fantasyland, and then that, for lots of reasons, that particular attraction got shelved, and we came up with a new idea. Okay, and that idea took long to develop, so now it was out of queue. So now all of Fantasyland's being built, and there's this hole. So then we had to figure out, like, how do you get to it? Where do you put stuff? When you can't have it's a theme park. You can't have construction workers going. You can't sever a walkway, right? Like, so it really became a logistical puzzle. And then we started thinking about how you could articulate certain things to accommodate said logistics. So I think that that's an extreme example, but like, there's a lot of places that are on like the river or like you don't have a place to lay down, or the lay down's 2, 3, 4 blocks away, if not farther. And I think it's really a big part of it. And stadiums are big venues, right? Like, I mean, rakers and seating bowls, usually span 24 feet, whatever. And I mean, they're big pieces, right? It's like building a 10-story parking garage. I mean, there's a significant amount of area to put precast. And when I talk about that, people don't realize, like, a parking garage is a prefabricated building. You know what I mean?
Yeah, interesting. I think about the logistics part of it, and I worked with a guy who built boats before architecture, and obviously that's a prefab job right there, right? And they're being built in a factory somewhere, and then they got to get them to wherever they're going to go, whatever that body of water is. And so bridge heights, lane widths, and a lot of these things are design constraints, right? So people don't necessarily think of logistical things like that as being design constraints. They probably think about it the other way around. Like, okay, well now that we've designed this thing, how can we actually prefab it in parts and then assemble it on site? And with a boat, you're talking about like a monocoque shell, right? You can't do that, right? So with prefab modular, you do have these transportation constraints. You've got permitting, you've got roadway widths and bridge heights and hours of the day, and now you've got even crazier stuff where, like, certain people can't even cross certain state lines, stuff like that, right? So do you guys have people on staff, or is this all about partnerships with the contractor?
Yeah, it's definitely about partnerships. So no, we don't have people on staff, but I'll give you some examples. Like, in 1904, it was, we talked about, okay, the plant's in Idaho. We're going to San Diego. We're going to Oceanside in this case. It's like, all right, so we talked to, there's in the prefabrication module world, it's, you have entities that build, then you have entities that transport, and you have entities that stack. You know what I mean? And so, the prefabricator is not the guy or the entity that's stacking. So, I call that the three-legged stool, right? Like, let's get us together and figure out what your route is and when the schedule. In 1904, we ended up setting, if you remember the diagram I shared, it was like, they gave us a constraint. It was like, we can go 40 feet long and we can go 15 feet wide because our route, that's what we can do without pulling special permits and without having to travel between 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning. We thought about all that. And then so again, logistics first, and then articulating the design, and then in right sizing that, reconciling that to any of the criteria. And like, that's the other one that makes me chuckle is like, well, I don't know why I said chuckle. I've never really said that before.
You're getting old, Tom.
And I laughed at, like, people like, oh, well, that's an unnecessary design constraint. I'm like, is it? Like, I think it's pretty unnecessary when we dig in the ground and we find that, it used to be a Sherwin-Williams factory, 20 years ago. That's a pretty unnecessary. You know what I mean? Like, there's all kinds of design challenges. Like, and this one's actually easy to solve for. So.
It's a known quantity. Yeah, it's not like you're opening something up and you don't know what you're going to find. It's, that whole reverse engineering thing, I think, is a really great way to kind of sum that up. But it's something that, again, architects don't necessarily have to think of. And so when it comes to that part of it, again, this is kind of a mindset shift, which is no, we're going to figure this out before we start designing so that everything happens smoother. You've worked in other offices where that wasn't anything that you had to think about. What was it like changing the mindset so that that could happen within the firm that you're at now? Or was it already there?
No, I don't think it was. I mean, I think again, going back, I have enough collateral and data and information that was presented to say, okay, here's how it would be deployed. Here are the partners, right? So then it just became, all right, well, what would be the project type, and who's the good? You have to have the perfect owner to do it, right? You have to have an owner that is willing to trust the process. There are some owners that want to see how the sausage is being made, and there are some that just don't care, right? And that's their prerogative. And so in our case here, again, it's just like, look, here's this project we're working on. Here's the conversations we've had, and here's what we want to do. And the owner's down for it, and this is how we're going to do it. And we have a roadmap in place. I will also say that OSPORTS has a senior person on our leadership committee that spent 32 years in the construction business. So we like to think, again, as proof is in the pudding, like we think about it and want to think about it at a deeper level, right? This is no longer, and it isn't, and it shouldn't be coming up with a radical design and a really beautiful, thoughtful design doesn't change, right? Like those things need to happen, and those need to happen artistically and creatively and without limits, right? Like great design comes from just ideas and working through them, right? But once their general idea is realized and accommodated and accepted, then it's like, okay, so let's find out what the goals are. What are the priorities, right? And then Robert on our team, helps us and others. I mean, I've leveraged Robert many years before he joined OSPORTS, but and others. I have other, I think the construction partners are some of my closest friends, because it's like, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think is better for this climate or this thing? It's like, is this berm better than an elevated seating bowl or whatever, right? Like it's not. I shouldn't be doing that. Like I should be relying on the people who can control that. And I think that's when you talk like that and you operate like that, it's easier just to support it. So I think that's why the idea works here at OSPORTS.
It's interesting, just keying in on a couple of things you said about, loving problem solving as an architect. That's the thing that you enjoy the most. And then also thinking about things at a deeper level. You guys have figured out a bunch of stuff when it comes to prefab and logistics and all that stuff. How valuable does that translate? What kind of value does that translate into for future projects? All right. Because I would assume that not every firm thinks like that, right? And because they don't get the same kinds of opportunities that you have. So can you put something to that just to give an idea of what that's been like for you guys?
Well, I mean, like a value. I mean, the other thing, I think the value is also has safety is important in this too. We haven't really talked about that. Like quality control. The value is really better quality control. Like people build things in factories because it's organized and it's safer. Like your the ship example that you alluded to, that your friend is a participant of. Like I tell people, like a lot of times they build the staterooms upside down, because it's easier to lay conduit and electrical pipes and stuff, downwards instead of doing this on a ladder.
I've wrecked my shoulders.
Yeah, and then they flip it over with a giant magnet. I mean, the value is quality and control, right? Because it's all it's inspected, it's exact, it's to the millimeter. So I think the value is probably and the quality is a lot better. And I think that's the first thing a client sees.
I could see a client really valuing that, because that is probably likely the only project that they're going to do. But what about the value to you as a firm and that information and that process that you take to the next and to the next? Like you said, you're 4-5 years into this. You still see it. It's early, but man, you guys have done like a master class in this kind of work, right? And that translates to the next client, and it's this constant build of evolving knowledge.
Yeah, I have people call me all the time, say, "Hey, I'm doing an office tower." As an example, here's one. I'm doing an office tower that has a podium in New York City. You know, we really, it's an office. So it's a podium, a garage, office, residences. And they're like, you know, the residences is easy to prefab. Like we can call Gerdau Building Systems and they can make the rooms for us. No problem. But what about the podium? What about a room that's not, you know, 12 by 20 by 40, right? So, you know, they commissioned us to kind of show them how they would do it, right? So I'm not even the architect on the project. I'm just demonstrating a different way of thinking. And we ended up doing this thing. I said, stop thinking about a floor, a wall, and a roof. Think about the space. Think about, you know, like it's designed by deletion, right? It's like your quintessential figure ground. Like look at the space and figure out how you can organize a space within a space. And in this particular scenario, I said, you want a grand hall in this design. There's a big podium with this big lobby, like you know, it's like 50 feet without a column, right? A traditional, just a really nice little thing. I said, that's nothing. Nothing has to be there, right? You pour a traditional slab, right? Traditional construction. You know, that's your floor. Okay. Now you do your pods. And, you know, I mean, there's certain rules you need, like obviously need 4 corners, 4 posts and whatever. But like, then we basically wrapped the main space with units, leaving the roofs, the walls off. And then the void became the space. And then you put everything above it and it came out pretty cool. And so, you know, that's in the works. And then we had one client who has all their soccer sports client. They have all their press stuff on the ground level and they want to move it up top. So they're like, well, we have this whole building facade and like, how are we going to do that? Like, how are we going to move all this or build stuff up there? I'm like, let's build it like a dresser. Let's build the rooms, crane over, slide them underneath the canopy. And we vetted that out and it looks like it's super, super plausible, right? So now they don't have to tear the facade apart. They don't have to, you know what I mean? Now we're just going to treat, you know, we need a bigger crane, which is an impact, but it's still super doable. And then the value to us is like, you know, people keep calling the client that the project we're working on that's very, very, very close that I think they're going to announce very soon. Knew of what happened in San Diego, right? They saw that because I presented that a couple of times. The soccer league, you know, promoted it for a little while. And then this kind of like, well, I mean, let's go talk to Thom. Let's go talk to, you know, the Osborne Engineering Company and OSPORTS and see if they can help us. And then we just started listening, right? And then trying to figure out if it was a fit, and it is.
So they saw that as innovative. Did you think it was innovative when you started that project, or did you just think we're just going to solve this problem and this is the path we chose?
You know, it's funny you ask me that because I can, without doubt, I don't think it was innovative. I thought it was me responding to what others are doing around me and applying it to my profession, right? Like, no, I think we're behind. And I think the architects and engineers that aren't thinking like us are even further behind. And so it's, yeah, no, I think we're behind. And I want to at least do my part to try to catch up and to fix and to better and to, you know, make it, you know.
Well, and I think that shows because you present the work, and by publicly presenting the work, right, it ends up on the internet at some point by very public. I mean, that your willingness to share, I think, is what makes that so interesting. There's a lot of firms out there who that would be their secret sauce and nobody would know how they did it. But that also has given you exposure to future clients as well. Yeah,
well, I mean, that goes back to that's why it's my hobby. Because if I have an idea and somebody takes it, that like gives me pride, right? Like if
it's open
the big
source,
kahuna takes, it is like it is. Like the only thing that's proprietary is my brain, right? Like everything else is a product, right? Like anything that comes out of it on paper, everyone has access to it. You could task me and say, I don't know, can you find the floor plans to X building? Give me a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks tops, I'll find it. You know what I mean? Because it's not, that's not, and just because you find an idea doesn't mean you can make the idea. Like you have to put energy into
that.
That
execution's the hard part, right?
Yeah. So, you know, I'm not worried about that. And if I can inspire people to think about it, then that's even better.
Yeah, I think when you said earlier that we're behind, I mean, we is the profession. It's not O Sports, right? And you might even see O Sports like it's not where you want it to go. You maybe aren't satisfied yet. Like it's an evolution, right? But you want to be evolving faster, as fast as possible. I don't even want to say you want to evolve faster than everybody else. Like the whole profession does need to move up the ladder here.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely going to change quickly, and it's not like I don't want to evolve just to evolve. I mean, that's the other distinction. Like I want to evolve that maintains what we're doing, what I'm doing as an architect. I want it to explore new ways. I mean, like if I did something over and over and over and over again, I wouldn't be an architect. I just wouldn't. Do you know what I mean? I would go back to what I wanted to do in the first place and be a mascot. That's a true story. Yeah, no. So I just think that there's a lot of things that can make us more successful and allow us, and my team included, to be able to enjoy what we do by not grinding on the things we don't need to do.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you take it upon yourself to share that with others. I think that's key for that overall evolution, like you said, so that we can not be behind everybody else. Yeah. So what are you excited about? Let's finish off here. And what are you excited about in your practice of architecture and your world of sport and all things, Thom?
Yeah, well, I'm excited that sports architecture and the construction world has a whole new wave of activity coming in front of us. And, people generally are more aware. And I think what one of the good things that, if there's any good thing, I'm trying to find a silver lining of COVID, but like COVID displaced a lot of people and put people in different roles. So now there are a lot of people doing things that they didn't necessarily think they would ever be doing. So now you used the word earlier when we were talking about innovation, and you can't innovate when you don't do anything different, right? You put the same people on the same thing, they're going to do the same thing. It just might be a different color. And so now I'm excited about people being in different places and people bringing new ideas to the table and owners being willing to listen to it and consider it. So I'm excited about that. I think there's going to be some really like SoFi Stadium's an amazing building, right? Do I think that the price tag I don't think it'll ever happen again. But if there was a $3 billion project, that's a beautiful building, and the Super Bowl is going to show it off eloquently, and it's going to be amazing. I think there's going to be a lot of things that come out of 2022 and 2029, 30 that are going to be just revolutionary designs and building products. And so I'm super excited about that in our industry. And for me, I'm excited to be at the helm of OSPORTS, to be able to at least put our company in a position to do our part, So, yeah, that's what I'm excited about for sure.
SoFi Stadium maybe did cost a lot of money, but it also is the reason why the Rams are in the Super Bowl. We can say that as architects. It's the reason. The building is the reason.
Yeah. Well,
put a price on that.
Yeah. Well, when we did not like it was my previous company, but when I was at the previous company doing the Jaguars Performance Center, the original one with the amphitheater project, the Jags went like 12-4, and it was like it's because of the indoors, because of the music venue. Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm sure it's. I don't know. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but it is pretty coincidental. But you know what? Tampa Bay was in the Super Bowl last year, and it was in Tampa, so crazier things have happened. And but yeah, no, I'm generally excited about like even the fact that you and I met as architects, and now you're doing this component, which is really awesome, which you're gonna, I've been, since I've tried to start following you, it's just about spreading the word and connecting dots. And one thing that I'll always do is try to stay friendly with people that I meet. Like, I'm pretty good at that. Like when I meet people that I really think can provide value, I try to stay in their peripheral.
I love what you said a minute ago about how you see people in different positions or doing different things because of that displacement that occurred during COVID. And I do feel similarly myself, right? So getting out of and this is maybe cliche at this point, but like out of working in the profession to working on the profession is a very different perspective. And it forces me to, I don't know, be very unsure of myself and what my capabilities are, but then work harder to try to achieve things that it is harder to apply that to a whole profession than it is to one firm even. But by getting that new perspective, there is value there and it keeps you fresh. It also keeps you a little scared. I think that's important to point out.
You got to be humble. And I don't know who said it, but I mean, you got to surround yourself by smarter people, and there are a lot of incredible people and you're never the smartest one in the room. You know what I mean? I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to anyone. Maybe. Then again, I have met 7 billionaires and they've all been incredibly smart. Every single one of them. It's incredible. But you get what I'm saying. I'm like you can't think you're the smartest one. And if you're in a position to put people in a room, you shouldn't be the smartest one in the room. And I think that our profession is aligning to where that is a fact. And because there are a lot of smart people, but you don't know everything about everything. And
that's an interesting thing because I think a lot of architects feel like they have to have all the answers when it comes into those situations.
But that's just naive and stupid. So I mean, like it. No, like I tell my younger people, I'm like, look. So actually, this one particular person that works for me, I gave everyone these books and I wrote notes to them, and I told her, I said, push yourself. Like I'm not gonna let you fail. Like just go as hard as you can and do whatever you want to do, because she's going to learn something that I don't know. And I need to, people should enable people to want to learn without being afraid of failing. I have this coffee cup that is, I don't know where it is. It's your like Cape Canaveral launch thing. I don't know where it is. And it says failure is not an option. And I carried this cup around for years. This thing's got to be 25 years old. And I keep it now because I laugh at it. Because I'm like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever read. Like, how can you succeed if you don't know what failure is? Like, you have to fail to make it. So I think it's funny that NASA, the company that failed, because they didn't think like Elon Musk thought. You know what I mean? Like, I use that cup and it's a reminder to just not to be naive.
A lesson in a cup. That's awesome.
A lesson in a cup. Sure is.
Well, Thom, thanks for hanging out today and catching up. This has been fantastic. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And obviously, hope we can see each other soon in person.
I would love for you to just tell everybody where they can follow along with what OSPORTS and you are doing.
Yeah, so osports.com is the website. OSPORTS is a brand of the Osborne Engineering Company, which is a 130-year-old sports firm and out of Cleveland, Ohio. Really cool stuff. Check us out. And I'm always about Thom Chuparkoff is my Twitter handle, Thom_Chuparkoff. I'm pretty active on social media, and for those who don't know me yet. When I say it's my hobby and it's fun, it's true because you'll meet my family via social media and see all kinds of stupid stuff I do to myself to, torture myself on my golf game and that kind of stuff. So, we're osports.com.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'll have links to all that in the show notes for everybody who's following along to make it easy, but appreciate your time.
Evan, you're the man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Troxel Podcast, and once again, I would like to thank ARC IT for sponsoring this episode. Visit their website at getarchit, that's GETARCHIT.com. Thank you to Avail for their support of this podcast episode. Visit getavail.com to see their holistic approach to content management today. Thanks to NCARB for their support of this podcast episode. Visit ncarb.org/AOP and contribute to the Analysis of Practice survey today. This show is part of the Gabled Media Podcast Network. You can see all the shows at gabledmedia.com. That's GABLMEDIA.com.
You can help support what I'm doing here by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help get the word out, and of course, share it with your friends. I'd love to hear from you, so leave a comment on the website at trxl.co/podcast, where you can find every episode. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. Just search for eTroxel. Talk to you soon.